Okay, we are recording and it's 4 p.m. in China, so it's time to start our webinar. We're talking today about Marie Curie Staff Exchange Action, and we have an expert with us that I'm going to introduce in a minute. But let's start with a quick introduction of the team here and of us, the organizers, Access China. So I'm Anna Facchinetti, I'm country coordinator of Access China, here together with my colleague Halderberg, who is going to take the floor in a second, and also with Vanessa Lee, that is also from our team in Beijing, and is going to help us with the translations. So the outline of today's webinar is this. Halder is going to start and is going to tell you quickly what we do here at China and give a quick also overview of Chinese participation into Staff Exchange's web action of Chinese entities. And then I'll give the floor to the speaker of today. She's going to do a quite rich and interesting presentation that is going to last about 40 minutes. And then we will conclude with a Q&A session. So everybody is welcome to send their questions through the chat box during the presentation. We will collect them and then we read them out loud to our speaker of today at the very end of her presentation, so we didn't interrupt her. If you don't feel too comfortable writing and asking your question in English, you're also welcome to do so in Chinese, because we have Vanessa with us and she's going to help us with the translation into English. And if there's time also, someone wants, we will also, we should be able to allow you to unmute yourself at the end so you ask your questions more freely. Anyway, I don't want to waste any more time, and so we shall start, and I give the floor to Halder.
Thank you so much, Anna. Let me click share. Is the slideshow visible to you?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Anna. And I'm going to just be really, really quick. Today we have with us an excellent expert on the matter. So I'm not going to talk about the details of the program that we'll be looking at today, but what I will be talking about a little bit is about Access, and then sort of what our perspective of what's been going on between China and Europe when it comes to these staff exchange programs, which are the part of the Marie Curie actions. My name is Halderberg, and alongside with Anna Facchinetti, we are the country coordinators for Access in China. Access is this initiative of the DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission, and we sort of are a project that is all around the world where we try to facilitate the mobility of researchers and introduce research communities all around the world to the idea and the opportunities of the European research area. We do all kinds of things here in China. We have an office in Beijing where I am located at right now, where we have been situated since 2009. So it's been many years already. Like amongst the things that we do are these kind of webinars where we try to teach people how to apply for funding in Europe or other sort of skills that are very helpful when you want to be an international researcher. We also do events on the ground here in China. Just to name like a couple of examples of things that we've been doing lately, we had our series of events for European scientists in different thematic areas last spring with an upcoming forum for European researchers in China. But we also work really closely with Chinese researchers that are interested in coming to Europe and doing things with the European research institutions. For example, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions scheme. So the most famous of those Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions is the postdoctoral fellowship, which just had its deadline expiring like a couple of weeks back. But before we did that, for example, this year, we had like events where we were training postdoctoral fellows applying for the schemes. We had a mentorship pairing at the end of August, where we paired up a potential Chinese applicants with with successful Chinese Marie Curie postdoctoral fellows. So that was really, really, really cool. And these are just examples of what we do. When it comes to the Marie Curie Staff Exchange, I wanted to sort of take a quick look at what's going on between China and Europe. It allows Chinese researchers to go to Europe, and it also allows European researchers to go to China. This is sort of the main thing that you can keep in mind when you're thinking about the staff exchange. If we look at an overview from Horizon 2020, we can see that there was on average 72 researchers every year that were going from China to Europe. So that is quite a bit. There's quite a bit of mobility being facilitated by a scheme like this. Normally, this would be through like a self-funded way, or it would be through the co-funding mechanism that is like available here in China. But then there's also the other side of those schemes where the European researchers are coming to China through these projects. And we had on average 94 researchers a year. This was always funded by the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. If we just take a quick look at the projects that include Chinese, we had on average 13 projects a year that included a Chinese partner, and on average 27 Chinese partners a year. So like if there was a Chinese partner, there were on average like 2 Chinese partners per project. Like Anne is going to explain later, these projects normally includes a lot of different partners and institutions. You can find information about sort of these past projects in a database called Cordis. And if you look there, you can see that there were 88 projects in Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe that included Chinese partners. That is about 15% of the total number of successful staff exchange projects. So that's quite a bit. They're very, very relatively quite common that like Chinese institutions are participating in this. So just to look at examples of the domains, we have examples of projects in industrial technology, fundamental research, transport and mobility, societal challenges, climate change, energy, digital economy, etc. If you will go to the Cordis database, you will see something like this. Like the results will appear as they do here. And if you just like look here, you can see, for example, there's a mission of models and space systems, integration, operations, and networking. And the institution in question there that is from China is the Institute of Intelligent Software in Guangzhou, for example. This is very easy to see if you just like filter in the Cordis system. And you can see that there's like a lot of different examples of this. So this is a good way to sort of also get an idea how these projects look. And how Chinese partners are participating in them and what kind of projects and which institutions or whatever. This can help you to get a more concrete idea how this might be in reality. I am not going to go into more details about this. I know that Anne Nirobis is going to be great explaining all the sort of like the details of the program. I know also that she's going to be explaining a little bit about how the United Kingdom is now sort of part of the whole scheme again. So that's really, really nice. Since just like 2-3 weeks ago, United Kingdom has become an associated country to Horizon Europe, which is great news because the number one question we normally get in these webinars is like, oh, I want to apply with a UK institution. What's the news? What's going on? Well, we have the news now. It's possible, I guess. But we will hear in what way and how it looks like, maybe from our colleague at the UKRO office who is here today to help us with this webinar. I will add here a QR code. I'm going to leave this up for like 20-30 seconds. One of the best things about these webinars is, of course, to hear all this great information. But of course, a lot of the times after you start the process of looking into these schemes and maybe applying, there might be other questions that come up, etc. So we have WeChat groups on WeChat where people can sort of continue the discussion afterward. This group that I am sharing here has already around 60 participants from last year's webinar. So you should definitely join this one and we can sort of discuss. We try to surveil these groups and answer questions as they come up to our ability. But also a lot of the times I find it just be useful for the people that are participating in these groups to sort of interact with each other and share what they have found and learned and their experience. So that's also very, very helpful. If you're interested in joining the WeChat group, you can scan the QR code on the screen now, or we might also put it up again at the end of the webinar. That is it for my short presentation. I will give it back to Anne Facchinetti to introduce our main speaker today. Thank you so much to Anne, and thank you so much to the other Anne, Niro Bis, for helping us out today. So yeah, let's go ahead.
Thanks, Hunter. Yes, let me introduce Anya Nirovic, and I didn't ask her how to pronounce her surname. I'm very familiar with her name, obviously. So sorry if I did that wrong. She's the European advisor at the UK Research Office in Brussels, and she's also a national contact point for Marie Curie Actions. So she really knows what she's talking about here today, and I don't want to take any more time. I'll leave her the floor for her presentation. Again, please send your questions through the chat box. We will collect them, and then we will present them to Anne at the end of her presentation. Thanks so much for being with us. The floor is yours.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to come to talk to you about this fascinating scheme. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We will now talk today about the 23 Marie Curie Staff Exchanges call. I hope I will be able to give you a comprehensive but brief introduction. And that being said, let's dive straight in. First, I'll just say something briefly about who I am, where I work. Then we'll touch upon UK participation in Horizon Europe. And then I will be outlining the 23 Marie Curie Staff Exchanges call, how you can get involved, what benefits there are for you, and basically the rules and how to find partners. As Anna and Haldo said, there will be a Q and question and answer session at the end, and I'm happy to remain and answer the questions you may have. Very, very briefly, as Haldo and Anna already said, I am a European advisor at the United Kingdom Research Office in Brussels, and I'm also the UK national contact point for Marie Curie. And if you're interested, you can also sign up to a monthly Marie Curie newsletter delivered straight to your mailbox. It's a free service where we'll be promoting Marie Curie and basically detailing the news in the Marie Curie domain. So what calls are opening, what when a call will close, what new resources have been published, etc. The slides will be published after my presentation, and I would strongly encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. That being said, what is the UK up to? So basically what has happened with UK's participation in Horizon Europe. Good news. On the 7th of September 23, the European Commission and the UK government have now reached an agreement that the UK will associate to Horizon Europe and Copernicus program, and the association of both programs will become effective as of 1st January 24. Again, the slides will be circulated, but I would strongly encourage you to read these links, which contain all the necessary information you need to know. The question is, what does this mean in practice? That's, I think, the main thing you're interested in. In a nutshell, from the 24 work program onwards, UK researchers, UK-based entities will be able to participate on the same terms as researchers from other associated countries. They will be beneficiaries, they will be able to lead consortia, etc., etc. And that includes any 24 calls opening this year. The 23 work program, this is where the so-called transitional measures will still apply. So UK researchers must apply as beneficiaries in order to be eligible for funding. But if the project is successful, the UK partner will be moved to associated partner at the grant agreement preparation phase, and the UK will provide the funding for the successful participation. So UK participation in the project will be funded, but by the UK. And this is only for the 23 work programs. The 20 work programs, then it's business as usual. The 23 call still falls under the, let's say, transitional measures. This is a joint statement by the European Commission and UK government, and I would strongly encourage you to read the statement. What does this mean for this particular call? It means that UK-based organizations can apply to be a beneficiary, be a coordinator, can send staff on secondments, and can host staff on secondments. If the project is successful, The successful UK-based applicants will receive their funding directly from the Curie Horizon Europe Guarantee. They will not receive their funding from the European Commission for this particular call, because it's a 23 call and not a 24 or onwards call. And that means that secondment with UK partners can go ahead as originally planned. So there's absolutely no risk involved for you to include UK partners in your application. The funding is secured. You can read this in the link I'm providing. And we've had successful UK-based applicants under the previous staff exchanges calls. Their secondments could go ahead as planned. We've noted that the project officers were very helpful in ensuring that the project could go ahead as planned with UK participation and the original secondments as planned. Just the secondments are now funded by the UK government. So a very brief overview over the Marie Curie actions. This will be in brief because I'm aware of the time constraints, but I just would like you to gain an understanding of what Marie Curie is, if you are not familiar with it. And then we will meet straight over what the Staff Exchanges call is about. Horizon Europe is the main funding program of the European Union with a budget of nearly 100 billion for 7 years. And the Marie Curie actions form a part of Pillar 1. The funding program is organized in 3 pillars. Due to the lack of time, I can't go into more detail here. However, if you're interested, I would encourage you to click on this link to find out more. So what Marie Curie is about is that, first of all, it is a bottom-up scheme. So you can propose any research project you want in any research discipline. It doesn't matter what your research is in, you can propose whatever you want. It can be basic research, it can be near market uptake, but basically the choice is yours. It's basically choose your own adventure. However, what the intention of Marie Curie is that they want to enhance the skills of the people working on the research project while they're doing this research project. So it is not only a research project, but a training project. And that is the most important factor you need to be aware of. Marie Curie's scheme is research, but also training researchers. So if you want to train researchers, this is the scheme for you. The last point I want to notice here is there are free eye approach to mobility. So Marie Curie project should ideally be interdisciplinary between different disciplines, intersectoral, academic, non-academic sectors, and international, so between partners located in different countries. Again, I don't want to talk too much about this, but Marie Curie, here's just some key figures. And again, we have different schemes. Some schemes are currently forthcoming, some schemes are still open. Due to lack of time, I'm leaving the slide up for you to pursue later. So once the slides are circulated, you can have a look at them. And if you're interested, I would encourage you to research the other schemes further. That being said, let's now talk about the staff exchanges. That's why we're all here, I would assume. So the staff exchanges, in a nutshell, are a way for the Marie Curie program to get researchers together to form an international consortium with a strong intersectoral and interdisciplinary component. So what they would want to see in a consortium is an increasing collaboration between sectors, including SME industry businesses, the intersectoral component, but also a knowledge transfer between international partners. I will be discussing this on the next slide, but basically it's a consortium where basically you will exchange staff between sectors, between international partners while working on a research project. And this ideally should help you to build long-term collaborations. It should help you to develop your research and transferable skills because your staff is being trained at your partners' institutions. And again, it is in any research area. So any research project is welcome, from basic to near market uptakes for a maximum duration of 4 years. This is just, again, explaining what I mentioned before. But again, there are some benefits which I just would like to highlight again. For staff members, they're being trained. Their employability and career prospects will be increased by receiving training at other partners located in other countries, new skills, new techniques. You're the researchers, basically new research opportunities, these kinds of things. And the organizations will basically have staff returning with these new skills, which they can then teach at your institutions. So you'll basically gain new R&I capacity. There will be a knowledge transfer component, but also, and that's something we've really seen, there will be a strong increase in long-term collaborations with partners in other countries. And also, and that's what the European Commission is aiming for, intersectoral relationships with, institutions located in other countries. We'll go a bit over this in more detail later. But again, this is a tool to have your research project, exchange your research staff with other partners, have them build up your own research capacity, have a knowledge transfer, and also increase your collaborations, your long-term partnerships with partners internationally and intersectorally. So what would I need to know in order to form a consortium? First of all, the minimum criterion for the staff exchanges is 3 different legal entities established in 3 different countries must form a consortium. These legal entities can be located in the academic or non-academic sector. So any, legal entity, even the academic or non-academic sector can participate. So if there are representative from businesses, Chinese businesses among us, you are very welcome to participate. In fact, the European Commission strongly encourages it. However, what you must know is 2 of these different entities, and that's the minimum criteria, must be based in different EU member states or associated countries. For example, UK would be counted as an associated country. If the organizations are from the same sector, at least one must be from a 3rd country. 3rd countries are countries which are not associated to Horizon Europe or not an EU member state. So, for example, China would be considered a 3rd country under Horizon Europe. And this requirement is because the European Commission really strongly tries to increase the participation of non-academic institutions, and hence this same sector requirement that basically you try to have a consortium with academic and non-academic partners. The question we then usually receive is, what does this mean, academic, non-academic partner? I have provided you here a brief definition from the academic and the non-academic sector here. However, I would strongly encourage you to note that the definition of the academic and non-academic partner will be determined by the European Commission once you register on the European funders portal. Once the slide is circulated, I will provide a link here as well so that you can directly click on it and find out more. But basically, the European Commission will determine whether you are an academic or non-academic institution. And hence, it is really, really important when you start building your consortium to be aware, is the organization working with academic, non-academic? Are we fulfilling these requirements? Please, as soon as you start figuring out your consortium, make sure you have these, you think about this, you make sure that your consortium is eligible, that all these requirements are fulfilled. Then what is the consortium composition? We've just learned that 3 is the minimum, but there's no typical consortium size. We've seen consortia ranging from 3 to 20 and more organizations. And it really depends on the need of the individual project. It really depends on the research project and the training you're proposing. And you will not get brownie points if you include more organizations or less organizations. It really has to be a convincing research and training project. That's all the evaluators will care about. That being said, there are 2 terms you need to understand. The first is beneficiary. A beneficiary is an organization which is located in your member state or Horizon Europe associated country. They can send staff on secondments, they can host seconded staff members and provide training opportunities. However, associated partners will be those located in a 3rd country. And China, for example, would be considered a 3rd country. You could host seconded researchers from, European countries, Horizon Europe associated countries, and you can send staff on secondments. And specific funding eligibility rules apply, which I will come to in a moment. But again, always remember what the European Commission wants is a stronger international, intersectoral, and interdisciplinary component. So they really want European researchers to go abroad, have researchers from 3rd countries come into Europe, have the skills exchange, and have this non-academic, academic exchange component in their research projects. Sorry. Now it's working. This I must admit, personally, I've given this presentation many times and I still don't like this graph. So I'm going over this very slowly, that there are no misunderstandings. I'm also would be welcoming your questions in the Q&A session at the end. I'm aware that it takes some time to get used to. So this is the funding eligibility table for secondments. So first of all, EU member states, Horizon Europe associated countries are automatically eligible for funding for the secondments of their researchers. As a third, country participants from low and middle income countries. There's a list on this link here where you can find out which countries are automatically considered for funding by European Commission, which third countries are basically considered low and income countries, so they will be automatically be eligible to receive funding, and which countries, like China, are considered high income countries. So in this case, you will need to provide your own funding to support secondment staff. What does this mean? That means if we have institutions, here the sending institutions in Europe, let's say Germany, for example, and they are sending their researchers to another country, they will receive funding. They will receive funding, for example, to send researchers to China. And this funding will fully cover all the costs associated with the secondment. So if you are a Chinese organization hosting German researchers, you will receive from the German institution, you will receive funding for these researchers. You will receive the training costs, etc., etc. So hosting costs, we'll get to that. However, Chinese organization as a third country not eligible funding will not receive funding to send that's not shown in this table, apologies, to send their researchers to Germany, for example. If a third country would be eligible funding, they would be eligible to receive this. But as my colleague Haldo has already said, wait a second, 72 Chinese researchers went to Europe in the last framework program, funded by themselves through the framework program. And I will be talking more about what a previous case study said on this, because there are a lot of other opportunities for you to get involved if you don't want to send researchers. But this is the funding table. What you may need to note here is that in the total of secondments, only 1/4 of the total secondments between EU this is the one I hate. From the total secondments, only 1/3 can be between organizations, EU member states, and Horizon Europe associated countries in the same sector, and only if these secondments are interdisciplinary. And I'm mentioning this again just to make sure that you understand that the European Commission is really trying to enforce intersectoral, interdisciplinary, and international collaboration. So that's really the main goal of the staff exchanges. So I promised you that we'd be talking a little bit about how third countries can get involved, and even if they don't want to send staff, or even if, you can always host secondees. In fact, in one of my previous webinars, we had an Indian researcher who was hosting secondees from European countries at his institution. And what he said was, I have developed long-term collaboration ties. I've hosted these researchers, and not only learned their skills from me, but they also taught me new skills. They made sure that I entered a European network. I got into contact with European businesses. There was basically at the end of the pipeline a way for research to be used by European entities. There were skills there. There were basically a lot of opportunities for me by hosting and training these secondees. You can send your own stuff on secondments, but again, funding rules apply for countries, for third countries. So you have to be aware of whether you will be funded, whether there's a co-funding mechanism for Chinese researchers. And that's something you need to be aware of. You can provide other training networking opportunities. For example, what we've seen is researchers who are a bit unsure about how much shall I get involved, and they participated in advisory committee or project boards, or in network-wide activities, key stakeholders, or provided background and other resources. So you don't have to actually send researchers or host researchers. You could just say, you know what? I want to sit on the advisory committee boards. I want to be involved in project meetings, these kinds of things. These are also things you could do. In effect, I would encourage you to think about what you want to get out of this. And we'll have a few slides on this later, also on how to get involved. But it's really vital for you to think about basically, what do I want to get out of this? Long-term collaborations, picking up gaining new skills, maybe both, etc., etc. I will just be briefly going over some overview slides. And then we'll talk more in detail about how to get involved. Just that you're aware, there are some people, staff going on secondment must meet specific criteria. For example, if a German institution, let's say, wants to send researchers to a Chinese or institutions, the researcher must be employed or must be employed by the German institution for at least 1 month before being sent on secondments. They must have the appropriate experience, so you can't just send anyone. There must be a staff member. There must be PhD students, technical staff, research assistants, etc., etc., and they must have the necessary experience to undertake the secondment. And they must work full-time while being on secondment. A secondment must take place for each researcher between 1 to 12 months. So if someone wants to send a researcher for you for 2 weeks, that's possible, but overall, the researcher must be seconded for 1 month in total. So 2 weeks at the beginning, 2 weeks later on, but it must be at least 1 month. Because otherwise, it's not eligible for funding. After the 1 month is completed, funding is pro rata. And secondments, as I said, may be split into several stages. And what is very important is there must be a mechanism for basically the researcher to learn while being at your institution, for also transfer his knowledge or her knowledge while being at your institution. But also once the researcher returns to their sending institution, they must also teach other members, staff members at the sending institution the knowledge they have learned while being seconded at your institution. Again, we've provided here a short overview list. We are fully aware that this might, MSCA Staff Exchanges might seem a little bit daunting at the beginning. So this is an overview list, and I would encourage you to have a look at them once the slides are circulated. This is just, again, to show you the split. So you don't have, a researcher doesn't have to be seconded for 12 months at a time. They could be seconded for 3 months or 2 months. But all secondments must take place during the duration of the action, basically during the lifetime of the project. And at least 1 month must be completed. After this, the funding is pro rata, so for every day you've been seconded, but this 1 month must have been completed. This is the funding the eligible partners will receive. First thing to note is, for example, again, I always like to use examples. Let's assume we have a German institution which wants to send their researchers to Chinese organizations. In this case, or in every case, the employer must continue to pay their staff member salary while during the stay abroad. And the eligible partners will receive staff member costs. They will receive research training networking costs and management and indirect costs for each eligible month, or after this month has been completed pro rata. What does this mean? What does this cover? The first category, the 2,300 euros, is basically travel, accommodation, and other subsidy costs related to the secondment. So basically, if Germany sends a researcher to a Chinese institution, for example, their stay in terms of travel, accommodation, everything would be entirely covered. And the research training and networking costs are any costs related to training, transfer of knowledge, networking activities, and research expenses. So basically, any cost incurred to research expenses, any costs related to training would be fully covered. The management and indirect costs are basically any costs incurred by the institution in relation to the action. So for example, personal costs, you could have, costs for heating a room, let's say. And any of these kinds of costs would be covered as well. And they're generally subsidized by the coordinator to cover network-wide activities. And these institutional cost transfers can be transferred to the associated partner. Amount will be then decided and agreed by both organizations. So again, there's funding available, and the funding will make sure that the researcher receives their training while working at your institution, but also any training and research expenses they have while doing research at your institution. So again, they will be doing research at your institution, but they also will receive training at the same time. And that's important to know. It's a research and training project, and it's fully covered. The letter of commitment is a requirement for associated partner. It must be up to date on headed paper, and the template will be available on the call webpage once the call opens. And it's really important to note that failure to include this letter of commitment can result in the proposal being declared ineligible or the associated partner being excluded. So again, this is something I would just like you to think about if you want to get involved, if you, I don't know, want to send stuff, if you want to host stuff, from the beginning, make sure that you have this letter of commitment at the ready. How to get involved? This is always the question people come to us. How do I get involved? I'm curious, I want to learn more. The 23 Marie Curie Staff Exchange call web page has all the guidance for successful application. You will receive a list of frequently asked questions, an online manual on how to submit the applications, the guidance for evaluators, guide for applicants, and so on and so forth. So everything will be on the Staff Exchange's call web page. Finding partners. There's a tool called the matchmaking platform. This matchmaking platform, the Marie Curie matchmaking platform, is not only available for the Staff Exchanges, but for all Marie Curie calls. So if you want to get involved in a doctoral networks call, if you want to get involved in a co-fund call, this is the tool for you. I would encourage you to have a look at the platform, sign up for it, publish your profile, what you're looking for, or proactively contact other potential partners on this web page. The Staff Exchange's call web page also has a partner search function which you could use. You can find partners or publish your own advertisement. You can use your own existing networks, or you can proactively contact potential partners. That's also something that we've seen a lot, not only for the Staff Exchanges call, but for every other Marie Curie call. Sometimes collaborations started by contacting someone saying, I'm interested in collaborating with you on a doctoral network call or any other calls in that area. I have the following skills. Would you be interested in collaborating with me? And what we found, what's really important is your internet presence should be up to date. It should be clear on what you're doing. Because sometimes we had people saying, they contacted me. I have no idea what they're doing. I have no idea whether it's spam or not. I'm hesitant. And you need to be very clear in your email what you want and what you're contributing to the project. Because I've seen sometimes heard from coordinators who've been contacted. Again, I had no idea what this person who contacted me wanted, what skills they were bringing to the table, how they wanted to be involved. So be very clear on how do you want to be involved? Do you want to send your researchers? Do you want to host researchers? Do you want to, I don't know, participate more in project meeting or an advisory board? What do you want to do? What skills do you have? What resources, etc.? And Hado has already mentioned this, but the Cordis webpage has a list of previous projects. And not only for the Staff Exchanges calls, but for all European funding calls. This is a valuable researchers to find potential collaborators. We've had people who literally went through it, said, these are research projects in my area. These are the people who've been successful. I want to collaborate with this person. I write a very good letter. write a very good email. I make sure they know what I want from them. And then collaboration started this way. And you really need to be very clear what you want to get out of the collaboration. What will your partner get out of this collaboration? Will this project solve a problem for them, etc.? And the one thing I would encourage you to be very clear on intellectual property rights. Sometimes that seems to be a little bit, let's say, discussed later in the proposal development phase, and then people, might be a bit disappointed or might be a bit frustrated. So these kinds of things, who lead on the application? What about intellectual property rights? These things I would encourage you to discuss early on. So Again, I'm aware that my time is coming to an end, but we still have some minutes. As early as possible, discuss and agree with your partners on the sectors, the state of the countries, the interdisciplinary of secondment. So be really clear that you fulfill the eligibility criteria. Which sectors are you in? Which country are you in? Which secondments will take place? Are they eligible for funding, etc.? What are the training needs in secondments and opportunities? How do they fit into the research project? Again, it's a research project, but this research project also includes the training of the researchers for the secondments. How does each secondment fit into the overall project? Financial resources, financial allocation, budget. For example, how will the money flow? The governance and monitoring structure of the consortium. This is something where you can get involved in, even if you don't want to host or send researchers yourself. You can still say, look, I would be interested in, as an external expert, let's say, on the advisory board. Again, we've had people who, we've had researchers who had never been involved in Marie Curie projects before, and they basically dipped their toe into the water by first saying, I'm interested in becoming more an external advisor in this year. Maybe next year, I'm participating in a more active capacity, sending, recruiting, etc. But this year, yeah. And what I would really encourage you to think of the project in simple tables and Gantt charts, because sometimes we've seen proposals where they just put everything on the board, on the wall, and hope something sticks, but really be very clear in what you want to get out of the project, what research you want to do, what secondments will help to support that research, etc. I will leave this for you to pursue later. Again, the slides will be circulated. But again, just really one advice for you, because I've seen it a few times. Read the call documentation, read the evaluation criteria, and closely follow the evaluation criteria. Again, it's a bottom-up call, so you can propose any research project you want, but the evaluation criteria are very clear. Don't make up your own because you've seen this, and this didn't end well because the evaluators will read your research project with the evaluation criteria in mind. Will there be training provided for the researchers? What's the research project, etc. Yeah, just in the interest of time, here's some additional resources for Marie Curie. If you're interested, this is what the Marie Curie scheme is about. And we provide you these resources. You can have a look at them and fully understand the background of the Marie Curie requirements. And in the interest of time, and because I'm aware that you might have a lot of questions, I would just very briefly like to end this presentation by talking over the timetable. This call will be launched on the 5th of October 2023. I understand that the European Commission will hold a webinar for potential applicants, which I would strongly encourage you to attend. I am not aware at the current time when this webinar might take place, so I would encourage you to keep your eyes open. Sign up for a newsletter or follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn, because we, as ACRO, the United Kingdom Research Office, will be publishing this. And Anna, I think I can also send you the information once it's out. And I would strongly encourage you, if they do this again, to go to this webinar. You might find partners. You might find, out more about this call, that that's the one for you. In any case, the deadline is the 28th of February. Please submit your proposal early. You can submit as many times as you want before the deadline, but once the deadline has passed, there will be no further additions or any changes to the proposal being accepted. We had a lot of people asking, can I make any last minute changes after the 28th of February or after the call deadline? No, you can't. 28th, that's the final deadline. You will receive notification if the project has been selected around June or July. And the first projects can then start November 24. So this is the timetable I would encourage you to keep in mind. And with that, I say thank you. I hope I haven't been too fast, but it was a good perspective of time. Anna, Haldor, I'm happy for your questions.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. Thank you very much. You provided a lot of useful information, and we are really, really thankful from our side and also from the side of the audience. And so, yeah, I'm going to read this question that we have just received. about how are Sino-British joint venture institutions considered under the scheme? Are Chinese and British campuses considered as separate institutions?
That will depend on how they have been set up. And can you please, I put our email address in the chat. Can you please send us this question with more information? Because sometimes the devil is in the detail. It really depends on how they legally have been set up.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a tricky one. Anyway, let me just take the opportunity to tell everyone again that we will share the PowerPoint presentation and also the recording of this webinar, so you can go through it again. And you can send us an email, or you can send Anne an email, or if you want to reach Anne, you can always reach us. And maybe Halder will also put on the QR code for our WeChat group later on before the end of the webinar, and that's also a very good way to stay connected and ask us questions. We at Your Access China, we're not experts, but in case we are not able to reply to your questions, we can always forward them to someone who knows better. So you also find in the chat box the functional email for the UKRO office, and you can forward to them the specific questions that you might have. So, and we continue.
Absolutely. I will share the QR code in a bit. I will share the QR code in a bit about the joint institution stuff. If it's based here in China, it's almost definitely a Chinese entity, and in those cases, it will be a third country. But it can be complicated. So, absolutely, if you have more specifics or whatever, you can reach out in person and send us an email and ask.
I would really, I don't want to say, I want to give specifics without really having looked at the case in detail, because we have international institutions, for example, European Molecular and Biology Lab. And basically, in this case, it's the country in which the main headquarters are located, which gives it its status. So there can be nuances, and really just send us the exact details in an email. It's better for everyone. I see that there are a few more questions in the chat.
Yes, exactly. We're receiving that right now. There's Sharshan who is asking, if I'm employed in Poland, I have one corporation in Germany, and I apply for this scheme. Do I need to find one institution in China? Is that right? I'll let you answer.
No worries. I can put the slides up again, but for example, I'm never sure whether I should use examples or just rules. So the minimum eligibility criteria are two institutions located in a EU member state or rising of associated country. So Poland and Germany would be two EU member states. And you could have another institution located in your member state or rising of associated country, but in this case, it can't be in the same sector. However, what you could do, you could have the Chinese organization as the third country organization. And in this case, you would fulfill the minimum eligibility criteria. So the answer to your question is yes. You could have one institution in Poland, one institution in Germany, one institute in China. If they fulfill the requirements, all good, that could be your staff exchanges project. Again, really think about the research project you want to undertake. Think about how each secondment fits into this, how each secondment can, contribute to the research project, but also contribute to the uptake, new teaching of skills for each researchers, etc. And think about, which sectors are in, etc. But you can have as many partners as you want, as long as you fulfill these minimum eligibility criteria. And Poland, Germany, and China would be minimum eligibility criteria.
Yeah. Thanks for the answer. Yeah, you really just need to focus on what's the role of every institution you add into the consortium for it to be successful. And okay, and this is also like a question, I think, on a different scheme where you can talk about different scheme that you like a lot. Chanjun is asking, is this like a post-PhD position? I'll let you take it.
No worries. Also, just quickly, I think I've seen a hand raised. So if anyone has any other questions and would like to raise their hand, I think Anna said at the beginning, we're also happy to take these if you want to raise your hand and mute yourself. But for the post-PhD position, I knew someone was going to ask this because, first of all, Marie Curie has different schemes. The one which specifically caters to postdoctoral fellow is the Marie Curie Postdoctoral Fellowship. The 23 call is closed. The 24 call will open in April, around April 24. I have on the slides, how do I get involved in Marie Curie? You will find the links to the matchmaking platform, and also for the call web page for the 24 postdoctoral fellowship once it's open, you can publish the artwork. That's how you get postdocs. That's how you can get involved in the scheme. With regards to whether Marie Curie Staff Exchange is like a postdoc position, you can second postdocs, postdoctoral fellows, but it has to be within a consortium. So it's literally like a consortium of different entities located in different countries coming together on a research project. They are seconding researchers, they are training researchers, including postdoctoral fellows, but it's not only one postdoctoral fellow applying per se. If you are one postdoctoral fellow applying on your own, the project will be declared ineligible. Don't do it. This is not a scheme for you if you're looking for a postdoctoral fellowship scheme. It's not. We've seen people trying to make up their own scheme rules. Please don't. You're wasting your time and you will just be declared ineligible, please.
Thank you for that. And so if there was a raised hand, I missed it. So I'm just going to invite everyone again. If you want to ask your question directly, raise your hand or send a message. We cannot mute you, so you can talk directly with our speaker. And then I think Vanessa just translated a question for us. There is Zhongqi that's asking, I saw that about 72 Chinese researchers go to Europe to do research through the Marie Curie Staff Exchange every year. That was in Halger's slide at the beginning of the webinar. How many Chinese researchers apply every year? I'd like to know the success rate of the application. So I don't know if Halger is able to reply to this question. Of course, it's not individual researchers, but through Staff Exchange. So please, I give you the floor, Halger.
Thank you. I also tried to raise my hand just to show how this is done. Everybody are welcome to pitch in at this moment. Just I think there's like a fundamental thing that needs to be really clear, and Anne has been clarifying throughout. This is not an individual fellowship, just so this is clear. So it's very hard to say, you know, like, oh, 72 Chinese researchers on average every year, how many of them are successful? Well, they are going to Europe as a part of a scheme that has already been set up. So there could have just been 3 universities in 3 different projects, and they are sending people back and forth. They might send 5 or 10 or 15 and whatever. And these are the numbers that are coming out. So like these individual researchers are not successful or not. They're just sent by an institution that's already in a successful scheme. I might, with that clarification out of the way, I might refer to Anne if she knows anything about the general success rate of those institutional applications. Maybe we have some information about that, but I have a feeling that we probably do not have information about the success rate of applications with Chinese institutions in it per se. That probably doesn't exist, but I think it's very likely that it's something similar to the general application, because I don't think there should be any reason to think a Chinese institution makes it any less or more successful. I would be interested to hear about the general success rate from Anne.
Okay. So first of all, you're right. For example, as Marie Curie entity, I have access to the Marie Curie dashboard where all the results for the Marie Curie postdoc, for every Marie Curie project, sorry, are listed. And we do not, unless you are the NCP for this country, we do not get access to the number of unsuccessful proposals, because nobody wants to hear these were the number of unsuccessful proposals for these countries. For example, I have access to the number of successful and unsuccessful proposals for the UK, but not for China, let's say. So calculating the success rate is difficult, and as Halder has mentioned, it is a joint project. It is a consortium. So really, I hope I made this clear enough in the presentation. If not, please let me know and I'll adapt my slides. It is a consortium. So they could have one Chinese institution sending 5 Chinese researchers, and you could have European partners, etc. That being said, the general success rate around 10 to 15%. It really depends. It's always difficult to measure, in a way, because you could have one UK institution in a consortium and the rest of the consortium, not a bigger consortium. So it really depends on the country. It is really quite difficult to measure, but it's around 10 to 15% for the UK. For it's around 12%, for example, for types. Yeah.
Thank you. That gives a little bit of context anyway, and about the success rate. And if China-based organizations host the EU secondment, will any funding allocation be available, I guess?
Yeah. I hope this came through in the presentation, but again, the slides will be circulated. So let's assume you are hosting in your Chinese organization, you're hosting European researchers. Yes, they will be funded. The way this works is the European researchers or the organization will receive funding to send these researchers to your institution. The researchers will receive funding for their travel expenses, accommodation, subsidy costs, etc. That's on the beneficiary. And your training costs, your research expenses. So, for example, if you have any research expenses related to the research, the training networking costs, these kinds of costs will be covered. And that's something we'll have to discuss with the sending institution because they will be receiving the money. So they will be covered, but it's the sending institution basically that holds the money. And that's basically who you have to discuss it with. So if you want to host a researcher and you have already a partner in mind in Europe, you need to get in contact with them and say, look, I want to host your researcher for 3 months. That's the research project. That is what they will learn. That is what we want to learn from them, etc. How are we sharing the research costs and any other costs that may arise?
Thank you. We have another question that is related to postdoctoral fellowships. So there's this researcher that is saying that he applied this year for postdoctoral fellowships. And I think his idea is like he's wondering if it's possible to, use the same proposal and the same host institution in Europe, adapt the proposal to, use it to apply for staff exchange.
So, okay, I'm going to give a general yes and then more detail. So yes, you can, if you already were waiting for the outcome for the postdoctoral fellowship, also apply to the staff exchanges. However, now it's the however. You must be, for example, affiliated with a Chinese entity or you must be affiliated with university. You must be applying in a consortium. So these are the minimum eligibility criteria. You must fulfill the minimum eligibility criteria. You must propose a research project with secondments between the partners, where basically researchers will receive training while working in secondment. Again, if you're looking for a project that is, focused on you and yourself, for funding that's focused on you and yourself, on your own research project, this is not the funding for you. This is a consortia. This is the funding for consortia, for a joint research project. You could, if you set it up, if you had changed your research proposal to work as a consortium. If you wanted to do it this way, that's completely fine. You can submit, but you really need to be aware that this is a different scheme. It has different requirements. It has different eligibility conditions. And you need to be very clear to have the right partners, to have the right research project, to have the right secondments. Are all the eligibility conditions being fulfilled? Because if not, I will be brutally blunt. Your project might be declared ineligible if you do not really take account of these things, and then you've basically wasted your time. Again, this is not a postdoctoral fellowship scheme per se; it's a joint consortium scheme. I hope I was.
Yeah, no, I think you were very clear. It's still Marie Curie, but it's completely different scheme. Yeah. So either you know what you're doing, otherwise don't waste your time.
Well, I'm sorry for being very blunt, but we will always receive the same questions after each Staff Exchanges webinar. And I just want to be very clear here because we've seen people, really good researchers, writing really good proposals, which were not suitable for the scheme they were applying to. And really, I've seen really good researchers doing this in place. It's just for personal side because I'm really feeling sorry for these people. So I'm just trying to be as brutally clear as possible.
Thanks, Anne. We have a couple of minutes left. Halder raised his hand. I don't think we have a last question to translate. I can't hear you, Halder. You need to unmute yourself.
Here we go. I said it's so important to understand this. I just want to build on what was being discussed here. It's very important that she's being brutal about this. It's important to know this is not an individual fellowship. So if you're applying for the postdoctoral fellowship, it's very different from this. But here's how you can maybe think about it. If you are now in China involved in an interesting research project and you're collaborating with people in other universities, etc., maybe your supervisor or yourself, possibly if you're leading a team, could join this sort of application, and then you could go to Europe for 1 month or 2 months or shorter times, and a lot of other people from the institution. It's just like you, it's still an opportunity for you to go to Europe and whatever, but you need to think about it as a team. You know, like you and your team are applying together, and then it allows you to go back and forth, etc.
That being said, someone posted a question about the requirements for the Staff Exchanges project. Can I quickly touch on this, because that's an interesting question that everyone asks a lot. I'm aware of the time, so I'll be brief.
No,
so
please go ahead. We have no rush, but
yeah. Is there a minimum size of the Staff Exchanges? The minimum eligibility criteria I mentioned on the slides: 3 institutions. 2 of them have to be located in your member state or Horizon Europe associated country. And after that, it is any consortium size, also basically any size you want, as long as it fits the research project, as long as the secondments are, suitable for the research being undertaken and the training needs, etc., etc. So it depends on your research project. We've seen very small consortia of 3. We've seen huge consortia of 20 to 30. But it really depends on the research project you're proposing. And that's the key thing. It must be suitable for your research project. The success basically relies on showing that you have a good research project, that you also train your researchers at the same time, that there are a lot of evaluation criteria, because it wasn't 40 minutes. I didn't want to really go in detail for the evaluation criteria, but you'll find them once the call opens. The evaluation criteria are very clear, that basically good research proposal, good training, good implementation. You have to really explain what skills you and your partners have. Can you really showcase your skills? Do you have the appropriate equipment, capacity, etc., etc.? So if you're interested in participating, I would encourage you to be on the lookout for our webinars. So ACO will hold Staff Exchanges webinars. You just have to get them up and running next month. And the European Commission will also likely hold a webinar. And I would encourage you to have a look at our and their webinars, because we'll go in much more detail than we could right now.
So yeah, there's going to be a lot of resources to get more information about the funding if you want to apply this year. And should we close the webinar, or because the time is over? We are in a rush, but I think maybe it's the time to conclude. Maybe I'll ask Halder if he wants to share the QR code once more, and questions can be sent there. It's a way to get connected also with people who will be applying, to maybe share comments and suggestions, but also we will try to reply to all the answers that we get there.
For those that are interested in the individual fellowships, the postdoctoral fellowships, you can join our WeChat group, and we can add you to our postdoctoral fellowship WeChat groups. We have other webinars on that also, which could be very helpful, because I saw some questions that had to do with that sort of mobility, and we absolutely can help you on that also. But we will just answer that in the group, if that's okay with everybody.
Okay, then a final very, very big thank you to Anna for being our speaker today. It was really very helpful. I think that the fact that we are still having a lot of questions means that the presentation raised interest, and that the scheme is, of course, appealing to the researchers in the audience. And thanks a lot to Halder and the EURAXESS China team, and thanks for the audience for joining us today. I'll close the webinar here. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna. And thanks to Vanessa.